to Be Anchored 4-Week Pilates Challenge. This is your journey of being anchored in strength and wellness. So my name is Bianca and I'm going to be taking you through this session. But firstly, I just wanted to congratulate you. I'm so proud of you. The hardest part was actually signing up and you did it. Today's class is all about the Powerhouse. So the Powerhouse is all the muscles around the core, the glutes, the pelvic floor, and even the back. Okay, so place your hand on your belly button. And I want you to feel when you breathe in through the nose, breathing out through the mouth, I want you to feel what the belly button is doing. So breathe in, the belly button will rise, and you breathe out, the belly button will lower. So keep doing that. We breathe in through the nose, sigh out through the mouth, and again in through the nose, sighing out through the mouth. Okay, this time I want you to be really deliberate about actually drawing your belly button into the spine. So breathe in through the nose, sighing out. On that sigh out, you're going to draw the belly into the spine. So I guess a common error here is sometimes we actually draw in and like suck in. And you can even tell with my posture, if I'm sucking in, my shoulders are going to rise. So your job is to keep your shoulders down and back and think about it being switching on rather than sucking in, okay? So you should be able to breathe normally and talk normally if you're drawing your belly button into your spine. So belly button to spine, let's try one more time. We breathe in through the nose, sighing out through the mouth. Very good. Okay, let's move down to your rib cage. So please place your hands on the rib cage. Good. Okay, so again, we're going to breathe in through the nose and you'll feel the rib cage expand. You breathe out and I want you to slide the rib cage down towards your hips. And do that again. So you breathe in through the nose, sighing out through the mouth, and you're tucking the rib cage in and sliding it down towards the hips. Okay, so the rib cage actually has intercostal muscles, and so you can actually squeeze the rib cage in and slide it down. And what you'll feel, if you find the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the hip, you're trying to minimize that gap between the two. So we call this the rib to hip connection. So have another practice. So we breathe in through the nose, the rib cage expands. Let's breathe out, extra deliberate. We squeeze the rib cage in and slide it down towards the hips. And you can also see as well, Pilates is definitely all about drawing everything in and narrowing the waist. Okay, so we've got the belly button drawing in, we've got the rib cage sliding down towards the hip, minimizing that gap between the rib and the top of the hip. Okay, rib to hip connection. The next thing we're going to work on is the T-zone. So the T-zone is going to, if you think about the horizontal line of a T, so an actual letter T, the horizontal line of the T is going from your hip to hip. And the vertical line of the T is your pelvic floor. Okay, so it's coming up through the midline. So I'm just going to sit up a little bit so I can show you what I mean with the T-zone. So the T-zone is the horizontal line of that T is your transverse abdominis muscles, and the vertical line of the T is your pelvic floor muscles. So to activate your transverse abdominis, which is that belt-like muscle, I like to think about putting on really tight jeans and trying to do the button up. And I can barely reach, so I can't do the button up. So by doing that, setting that imagery in your mind, you're actually switching on that transverse abdominis muscle. Okay, so have a bit of a practice with that. That is the horizontal line of the T. The vertical line of the T-zone is going to be your pelvic floor. And the way that we think about activating the pelvic floor is by drawing the pelvic floor up or stopping the flow from going to the toilet. So if you think about that, it actually does help to lift the pelvic floor up both ends and hold throughout all of the Pilates moves. So all of this needs to be switched on when we do the other Pilates movements. So you can see why it really is the anchoring point. You can really see why this is the foundation. We need to get this correct first before we move on. Okay, so in Pilates, we have two spinal positions. The first one is your neutral spine. To activate the neutral spine, you're already probably in the neutral spine, to be honest. With your feet on the floor it actually feels very comfortable to have a natural curve in the lower back here. However, anytime our feet come off the mat, we need to imprint the spine. So I'll teach you how to do that first. We switch everything on first, so belly button to spine, rib cage in, flatten and scoop, draw the pelvic floor up. Now we're going to imprint the spine. So we tilt the pelvis. So we tilt the pelvis, and now we have no gap. So imprinted spine is no gap in the lower back, and that is the safest option for when we take our feet off the mat. Okay, so let's practice together. So you have your neutral spine, feels pretty comfortable. And now let's come into an imprinted spine. So tilt the pelvis back, and let's float the legs up to tabletop. So this position here, where your knees are in at 90 degrees, your hips at 90 degrees, this is called tabletop. So you may notice that already your lower back is trying to arch. If that's the case, you need to bring the knees a little bit closer to your chest. You'd rather have them closer as you're beginning. Eventually, you'll push those knees away once that core is strengthened. You need to listen to your body. You'll never feel anything sharp or anything where you're hurting the lower back. So initially, if you're first lifting your legs up to tabletop and already there's a bit of an arch, bring them closer to you until you get stronger, until you get more comfortable, and eventually you push those knees away. Okay, so again, this is tabletop and we have an imprinted spine. Extend a leg and see if we can keep it all switched on throughout all of those movements where you're actually extending the limbs away from the body. So I guess this is where the challenge comes from. What's easy is that we can actually just move the legs. That's pretty easy. What's hard and what makes Pilates very challenging is that we're really focusing on all the movement coming from the powerhouse. So if all the movement is coming from that powerhouse, then this exercise alone will be very challenging. Okay, so we're going to do 5 leg extensions in tabletop together. So we're going to start with our neutral spine, so our feet are hip width apart on the mat. Let's switch on that powerhouse. So first, we draw the belly button into the spine. The rib cage tucks in and slides down, particularly on that breath out. We then flatten and scoop that T-zone. So we're putting on those imaginary jeans, trying to do the button up. And then we lift the pelvic floor up and hold it as if we're stopping the flow from going to the toilet. Okay, now that is strong, now that it is anchored, you are ready to come into tabletop. So we imprint the spine, no gap. We float the legs up to tabletop, 90 degrees. And here is where we're going to extend the legs. We're switched on, let's extend and come back to tabletop. Alternate, so extend the left, back to tabletop. We extend the right, you're breathing out. On the extend, we breathe in, breathe out, and breathe in. So if this is your first Pilates class, you're going to bring your knees closer to your chest. The reason for that is because we would rather strengthen the powerhouse correctly first. We want to get our technique right first. We want to be anchored in the core first, and then you can focus on challenging yourself and doing a more advanced movement. Okay, so then you extend the leg and come back to tabletop. You extend the leg and come back to tabletop. So if you want to make this easier, you're going to go a little bit higher. If you want to make it harder, then you go a little bit lower to the mat. We're going to exhale as we extend the leg, and we inhale as we come back to center. Let's exhale and inhale. And we relax. So you may have noticed that in those movements, your shoulders may have lifted up towards your ears. So that is very common in Pilates, and through all of these video series, you'll hear me say shoulders down and back. So I just want to talk you through that before we finish up. Whenever we do core workout, or anytime we're fatiguing, often what we do is lift our shoulders up towards our ears, okay? So I'm going to prompt you in all the classes to get your shoulders down and back. The way that we activate that is always through imagery. Imagine that you're holding a pencil in between your shoulder blades. And now I want you to squeeze that pencil and hold that pencil throughout all of the movements. Another common thing that I see in Pilates is that we scrunch up our face when we are fatiguing. So you'll often hear me say, relax the face. And that's what I mean by relaxing the face. We want to use our breath rather than squinch up our face. We want to use our breath to breathe out through the harder portion of the exercise. So in today's class, we looked at the Powerhouse. Drawing the belly button into the spine. We looked at the rib to hip connection, sliding the rib cage down towards the hips, minimizing that gap between the bottom rib and the top of the hip. We looked at the T-zone, which consists of the transverse abdominis muscle and the pelvic floor muscles. And to activate those, the little imagery for that is to put on those really tight jeans trying to do the button up. To activate the pelvic floor, you're imagining that you're stopping the flow from going to the toilet at both ends. You also may need to work on your shoulders being down and back, and the imagery for that is having that imaginary pencil in between the shoulder blades. Also, relaxing the face will help you in Pilates because you want to actually use your breath through the harder portion of the exercise rather than tense up your body. I hope today's class has been really valuable for you. I know that it takes a lot of thought and a lot of mind. That's why a lot of people actually walk away from Pilates feeling a lot sharper. So well done. You have completed day 1 of Be Anchored 4-week Pilates challenge. If you couple this with a healthy diet that consists of high protein and whole foods, you will see dramatic results in your mind, your body, and your spirit. Thanks for watching.